Welcome to the stage, founder and CEO of Colossal Biosciences, Ben Lamm, and founder and CEO of WestRiver Group and vice chairman of Topgolf Callaway Brands, Erik Anderson.
All right, a few people taking seats. It's great.
First day.
First day. It's great to be here. First of all, sound check. We're good? Yeah. See? I know, that's experience right there, huh? All right. Well, it's great to be here. In addition to how I was introduced, I'm also the CEO of Singularity University. Right on, right? And that's the role I'll be playing tonight, although you could ask questions afterwards on anything else that you'd like. And it's a really fantastic pleasure to be here with friend, partner, CEO, founder of...
Yeah, co-founder of a podcast coming soon.
Is soon, yeah, you and me. But Colossal Bioscience, playing the role of CEO and founder of Colossal Bioscience today is Ben Lamm, and it's not a stand-in, so we're good. Our Singularity, and some of you know of that, but at Singularity University, in the history of the company and the vision of the company was to work with exponential and transformative technologies that were applied to grand challenges and amazing opportunities for improvement in our world. In addition, at WestRiver and working with Ben and some companies like that, we've also been applying a lot of brand thinking, speed to brand kind of work that we do to these companies so that they can have the best opportunity to meet the goals of making global transformation. This is a story of that kind of partnership between Singularity and an exceptional founder like Ben, and the application of synthetic biology to the great challenges of conservation and saving species and diversity, and some of the things we're aware of because we have the Mammoth back here of De-Extinction, which of course is a well-known challenge and a well-known idea. So with that, I want to, Ben, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm super.
Take a couple marks, and then the way this is going to work today, I have a series of questions that Ben and I thought would be interesting to you, and we'll work those questions. There's not questions and answers today by design, but will be available afterwards should you like to do that. So.
Yeah, and we've, even though Erik and I come from slightly different worlds, from golf and business and de-extinction.
I saved golf.
Yeah, you de-extincted golf, but you made it fun at least. Not for any of the people that actually love true golf. But Erik's actually been working with us since day one. So I think Erik was like my 10th call when we started Colossal. And your advice to me was this is a generational company that we need to take pretty seriously. And so I'm very grateful to do this with you.
Well, let's kick off. So we're going to start with an important question. Where you feel you are in the de-extinction process. Just get right into it because everyone wonders, what are we doing? And we'll get to important conservation as well.
We get the Jurassic Park and when are we going to see shit question quite a bit. So we are still on path for 2028 for our first Mammoth calves. We've said that publicly. It's a big, hairy, colossal goal. We are not making other dates known quite yet, but I will say that based on some recent progress, it's highly likely we could see something significantly before 2028. But it will not be the Mammoth because that's 22 months of gestation, and
we'd have to be starting.
Yeah, we
now.
don't have a time machine. Yeah,
we haven't accelerated that process, and that's super exciting. Ben has amazing stories, and one of the things that's so exciting about the science and the technology and the brand that Ben is building is that all this exponential change is very scary, but Colossal inspires all people, and even the stories of young people who are inspired by the fact that technology can do something amazingly good, like de-extinction and preservation of species and diversity and work on conservation and climate change. And Ben will probably intersperse some stories of like young people
on our worst day at Colossal, it's still pretty fun. Like I was having a pretty terrible week 2 weeks ago, and I got this email of this kid that I don't know, And it was a picture of this like trifold, like old school science fair. And it was like bringing back the mammoth. And it was this like 9-year-old kid with like a bunch of kids around him explaining how there's this random company that's working to bring back the mammoth. And so on the days that, because what we're doing requires a lot of transparency and a lot of education, and not everyone understands it. Sometimes people get afraid of it, even though we try to communicate as much as we can publicly and do talks like this and do podcasts and everything. But on days when like everything's going wrong or seemingly going wrong, and you get this email from like a mom telling you thank you, it does like, it's like an amazing, unlike building a software company.
Right.
I never got those building software companies. I never had anyone do a book report or a science fair on conversational intelligence or AI.
No, those are great stories. So I'm going to leave us 2 pictures here that of why I think this is such an interesting thing about brand and technology and hope. So if you think of the picture, Ben and I, when we started talking about this, that this was a form of almost like a company or an idea like NASA. We're going to the moon, we're going to save species. And NASA was one of the best brands, and has been, but it was probably one of the most transformative brands in the world and in history. And so many things sprung from that. So when we think about the brand work that Ben and his team are trying to do, we think about that sense of hope and aspiration for good. And we're very comfortable and excited about how we continue to make this brand and help this brand meet those promises and give that sense of hope and things that were inspired by NASA. So that's one picture I'd love you to hold in your mind as we go through the talk, and I'll ask Ben to work on that. The other idea is these trees of companies and important ideas in science that come from that. And we were talking about NASA had a bunch of those, right? The whole semiconductor industry, a lot of companies in Silicon Valley. Some people look at the PayPal mafia or whoever. Yeah. So Ben essentially has planted, right, this big tree of opportunity that's built on the synthetic biology. And he's already got stories of the sprouts coming out, companies we'll talk about. So those are 2 good pictures. So hold those going forward, and I'm going to ask Ben, his next question, which is this transformation, which is so important to you. We hear a lot about de-extinction, but its application to conservation and impact on climate change is also exciting for you. So talk about how this technology and as applied and how it makes it different to conservation.
Yeah, nobody, I shouldn't say nobody, you're asking the question, but a lot of people only want to talk about de-extinction because it's cool, right? They think of mammoth, they think of thylacine, a dodo, insert your favorite extinct species. That's all they want to talk about. And what, you mentioned hope. One of the things that I heard early on before George and I started this was something that was very not hopeful, which was we're going to lose up to 50% of all biodiversity between now and 2050 if we don't do anything. And the weirdest part about that was when we started the business and we had our first investor pitch, the stats were 10%. So that's not a good trend line in 3 years, going from 10% to 50% forecasted loss of biodiversity. And what people want to do is they just want to talk about de-extinction, but they don't want to necessarily look at the choices that we are making as humans and the impact that we're making, not just to our environment, but to the other creatures that live here. And so with that, we have been trying to really spend a lot of time on brand education and help people understand that the application of the system of de-extinction to conservation can be transformative. And we're just in the situation where, we believe it's better to have a de-extinction toolkit and not need it because all of humanity has changed their hearts and minds and consumer behaviors, or it's better to at least have that than need it and not have it. And so one of the things that we're trying to do a better job of at Colossal is, even though people want to talk about mammoths and Tasmanian tigers and dodos and every other species they want us to make that we get news articles every day about I hear from the press of new species that we're not even working on. It's pretty interesting. And we get the dinosaur questions, we get the Jurassic Park questions, we get memes every day about Jeff Goldblum. But ultimately.
Well, I saw him.
Yeah.
just the other day, but no, I'm kidding.
I was like, where is this going? Like, is he here?
Yeah.
Is this a Scooby-Doo moment?
He does.
And so, no, but what we are trying to do a better job from a brand perspective is educating people what they can do today around conservation. Because, if we don't, take drastic measures, current conservation of just protecting a space and hoping for the best, it will work for some species, but not the vast majority. And so we need better tools, and there's just not enough money, especially not enough research and development money going into conservation. The conservation teams and the women and men that are doing it and have boots on the ground are doing an incredible job with very limited resources. And as we can go in and fund projects, build technologies that they need and give them to them, it's a game changer. So we're working right now on 2 really interesting projects in Africa. I actually met someone here today, so maybe hopefully 3 African projects, African elephant projects. But one, just trying to understand migratory patterns leveraging AI, understanding herd dynamics in elephant orphans. Like, how do we rewild elephants back from kind of a distressed environment back into a different herd? And that's something that there's, incredible people doing it, but with very limited resources and virtually no new technologies that are going into that. And so we're trying to, look for those use cases, see how they apply to both de-extinction and species preservation, and then go amplify them in the field, both with our dollars behind them and our expertise.
Well, it was interesting. We did hear that company that didn't excited about the amount of capital they were putting behind this, and we came away saying we get a lot of leverage there, so we'll work on that later. We'll hold some more thoughts about questions of how the different kind of animals might affect different parts of the species, because I love that story. We'll get to that. But talking about the technology side, what are some of the technologies you're using which support, endangered species and humans? I mean, a little deeper dive into, the underlying technologies that will form the sprouts of all these new companies and ideas.
Yeah, so everything that we touch from a de-extinction perspective has a computational analysis perspective, has an AI component, and has a genetic engineering and a genetic rescue component. And that's like, people are like, genetic engineering just for humans, computational biology, I don't understand it. AI, we know that ChatGPT exists. I think AI made that. And so that's what people know, right? And so, but when you look at de-extinction, you actually aren't trying to solve a point solution. You're trying to solve a systems problem, right? So you have to think about going to the moon. You have to think about, what are all of the pieces that I need? And then when you start to look at that end-to-end system, from computational analysis to birth and every step in between, from cellular health to stem cell reprogramming to genetic engineering, you can then build this system that then can be applicable to species today. And pretty much everyone I know has heard of the Northern White Rhino Project, right? Dr. Thomas Hildebrandt is incredible. Kenya Wildlife Services and the incredible team at BioRescue has just done an amazing job at saving these last 2 female Northern White Rhinos. But even with the eggs that they're getting and the frozen sperm they had from Sudan who passed away, they're only going to get about 18 embryos. And those are all really off of 1 or 2 founder lines. That means that eventually they're going to run into genetic bottleneck very, very soon when they're successful from a surrogacy perspective. But if we can take the same technologies that we're applying to bringing back the mammoth or other species and apply it to the Northern White Rhino, we can actually go sample museum samples, frozen zoo samples, even in some cases stuffed samples from like terrible hunting type situations. And we can actually take these samples, run them through our genetic engineering and de-extinction pipelines, understand the population diversity in the Northern White Rhinos, and engineer it into the existing 18 embryos. So now all of a sudden you don't have, you have 18 embryos that came from 2 founder lines, you have 18 embryos that came from 18 different founders lines. And that can absolutely save the species, even if surrogacy by itself can only temporarily save it. So you're still gonna run into genetic bottleneck without these technologies. And so that's a real world example that people are starting to understand, that they get the Northern White Rhino Project and they get how de-extinction of the mammoth could apply to that. But now we're trying to show how that could apply to marine mammals and a host of other species as well.
No, I think that's just, good on you, by the way, right? I mean, come on, that's amazing, right?
That's.
And I know you're doing this every day by yourself in the lab. There's only
just
4 people working for you. It's amazing, the mad scientists in the background.
We have 160 incredible
scientists.
And
we'll come back to the team, and we'll come back to some of the global nature of the community you're building, which has been fantastic. One of the other interesting questions that I got from another, I came back to Ben, so my job is I go around the world and people ask me hard questions and I go, go ask Ben. So one of the questions I got, which was from a really well-known conservationist in the UK, which was, tell us about rewilding, because one things don't want to do is put them in that thing that starts with a Z, so we're not going to talk about that, right? We want them to be in nature, and we have the vision, vision of this. But it was a really interesting question. How does rewilding work? And the follow-on question I got from this group was, what's their immune system looks like? And we're going to create these beautiful things and they go out there and then...
I get the other one. I get the zombie virus question a lot. Like, if you bring back a mammoth, we don't know what disease it had. It's going to give us diseases. I get that question a lot.
And then what's going to happen? So give us, again, paint that picture of, I know we have a rewilding project in the US and some other places you're working on. So what's exciting about this is not like 100 years out in the future, whether it's 2028 or now. I mean, we're having really active conversations with governments and investors and conservation organizations. But talk about rewilding.
Yeah, it's not done alone. Like, I think that people's view of rewilding is you have an animal, whether it's extinct or not, or maybe you have like a bunch of them and it's like a Noah's Ark moment and you like open it up and they just run out and everything's fine. Like, people are happy with it, governments are happy with it, the media loves it. No, that's not how rewilding works. It's a very stage-gated process. So you actually have to work with local governments, conservation partners, private landowners, indigenous people groups, because like some of the animals that we're actually working with, they actually have a cultural significance. One of the projects that we've started recently here in the United States is working with indigenous people groups here in the United States, listening to them about the buffaloes and wolves and all these different species that are critical to their way of life and critical to their culture. Like the thylacine, or Tasmanian tiger, was actually critical to the Aboriginals' creation story. In their view, if you ask Aboriginal leaders in Tasmania and Southern Australia, which I have, about rewilding the thylacine, they're like, it never left. Like, spiritually, it's still here. Mankind killed it in its physical form, but spiritually it's still here. And so when you have all these different nuances, rewilding is a very hard, long, arduous process that starts now. And so even though we don't have mammoths or thylacines or dodos, we've started all those programs now. And so we're working with those indigenous people groups and the governments and private landowners. And even in Tasmania, we work with the Logging Commission because it's the largest economic driver in Tasmania. So to think we're gonna put animals back into forests without, without partnerships with the logging industry, it's just an asinine thought, right? And so we do these committees and we have quarterly meetings in country. We're doing one here in the United States, one in Mauritius, where the dodo's from, and then one in Tasmania and Southern Australia for the thylacine. And then as we bring on more species in the future, we'll do that as well. And so that rewilding process that's the process to do it. So it's very stage gated, and you have to go through like expansive locations to more expansive locations, and then the wild. You don't just open the doors. The other thing though, what we've seen from I think probably the most famous rewilding program here in the United States is the Yellowstone Wolf Program, right? It's like reintroduction of wolves after 70 years, after they were culled by us 70 years ago in Yellowstone, has completely reshaped the park. And they see this all over the world when you reintroduce keystone species, whether they're large herbivores, omnivores, or predators. And predators actually have more impact than most, which is amazing. And so that process is one that will take longer than the genetic engineering of the mammoth. And so we started now, kind of assuming the success, and so far everyone showed up to the meeting, so I think they believe that it'll work. But for the most part, it is a long process that has a lot of voices in it, and some of them are ecological, some of them are government and regulatory, but then some of them are spiritual, and you have to take all of that into account when you're doing these rewilding programs. It's weird. Colossal is not the steward of the mammoth or the thylacine. We're just a part in the play of bringing it back.
That's incredible. And I think when we started working on this and the conversations that we have around the world, the fun part of working with Ben and his team on this company is that every country in the world is affected by this idea. And when we talk about the brand impact, if you talk about folks, the amount of coverage you get, like every time you announce something or talk about the woolly mammoth, it's just amazing. But that long arc toward bringing all these species back and putting them is the hidden story. It's the technology goes fast. The reclaiming and the reorganizing around these species is going to be, will be an ongoing permanent conversation.
Yeah, and we even have governments now that are actually reaching out to us saying, we've got critically endangered species, will you help us? And we've taken an open source kind of software model where it's like any technology we develop for conservation is free to the world. Anybody can use it. Just call us, ask us. We're starting to publish all of the scientific papers and our protocols on everything. But now governments are now calling and saying, that's great, kind of like open source. And they're like, but can you help us now? We have a problem right now.
Let's go back to this other picture of technology. Talk about some of the companies, you're spinning out, a couple of them already. And I just want to pause again for the picture, moving back to the tree. It's amazing, relative, I'd say, to when NASA started, how quickly all these ecosystems, whether it's the venture ecosystems or other, can take the work that your team is already doing and that George has done from Harvard, and the ones that, we can't do everything, the ones you're able to share and bring out. So tell a couple of those stories. I think they're amazing.
So in our first year and a half, we couldn't find any software program that could really do computational analysis at the level that we wanted. We needed a very complicated system. We needed to understand and simulate different types of edits in a genome. We need to do comparative genomics. We actually built an algorithm that helps us recommend the different tool for the editing. So everyone's just like, oh, it's just CRISPR, right? But it's not. It's a myriad of different tools that we do, some of which is even DNA synthesis, and we're building in giant blocks of DNA and swapping it in. And we have a paper coming out that hopefully later this year about that. And so we actually had to build software because nothing existed to do it, right? And so, luckily myself and a few of our co-founders have a background in software. So we built that company, we spun it out because we actually heard from academia and several biotech companies and several big pharmas that the same process can be used for multigenic studies for cancer research, or for, how can we improve kind of our small molecule design. And so we quickly noticed that this first company could spin out and actually help human healthcare outside of what we needed for de-extinction, which we did. We do have another company that may be announced in April. It's not a human healthcare company, but it's around ecosystem restoration. And we found some incredible technology at one of our university partners. It needed to be supercharged with synthetic biology. And I would argue that Colossal now is probably surpassed, at least from what we've seen from peer-reviewed literature, we've probably surpassed every academic and private organization in the world when it comes to genome engineering. So to our knowledge, we are synthesizing genomes and doing multiplex editing more parts of the genome than anyone has by some of the data points I can share publicly, that are step functions larger, especially in non-model organisms, than anyone's ever seen. And so any of those technologies could be used to help human healthcare, and we have applied those technologies to an ecosystem restoration problem that we think is as important as de-extinction. And maybe later this month we'll tell everyone about it.
Well, everybody send us an email. We'll put a big WhatsApp group together. We'll hit send.
But genetic engineering, like most genes also most disease states aren't single genes, right? And so we have to get very good as humanity if we're going to do more and more genetic engineering for therapeutics and genome engineering in humanity. We have to be able to edit multiple parts of the genome all at the same time without causing massive off-target effects. And so I think that more than likely you will see, this is not the April announcement, but more than likely you will see genetic engineering tools for healthcare that will benefit lots of different disease states in the coming years from us.
One of the sort of editorial comments from like a Singularity point of view, and when to the extent all of you I know are great visionaries in thinking about that, the underlying premise to what Ben and his team are doing that we actually believe is foundational and you can actually count on it is the rate of exponential change that's embedded underneath, all of the work that's been from AI to high-speed computing to all kinds of things.
It wouldn't be possible without today.
It's this convergence and how fast it's going. Remember Ray Kurzweil when the people said we did the first whatever it was, DNA sequencing rate, and they said it's going to take 100 years. He said it's going to take 17 months now.
Yeah.
Because they missed the doubling.
Yeah.
It's
gone from billions of dollars to thousands, which is incredible.
One of the lessons, and again, from the Singularity point of view, and Peter's involvement in this and our involvement, is finding these super concrete examples where the leaders are having the courage, the wisdom, and we think, what are the facts and the math, that you can rely on these exponential changes pushing you forward. So while it looks scary, almost like magic, to people who may not believe in that sort of rate of change, if you believe in that rate of change, it's reasonably predictable.
Compute, GPU, AI, and eventually quantum. I can't even think about what it'll do just to Colossal.
I can't think what it'll do for me, which I'm a little more interested in. But no, I love Colossal, but really I'm trying to save myself. No one is voting for that, by the way. You get votes like top 10 answers, whatever the
Erik Anderson
family thing, save Erik. It's not on anyone's list, but mine. That's okay. What about, this is interesting, the leverage of the dollars that are put into conservation and preservation, and how partnering with you and investing with you, as well as what we'll call the traditional conservation, ecosystem and charity system. Explain how you're working with so many conservation and why that's so exciting, and how you can leverage all that great community and the support you're getting there.
Yeah, we get one of the feedbacks, we've taken a pretty strong stance that we run towards critics. We like informed critics, lots of uninformed critics, but we like informed critics because you can learn stuff from. One of our biggest critic was Beth Shapiro, and she's now our chief science officer. And so, that's because we engage with her and listen to her. But one of the feedbacks that we get throughout our journey so far has been, but this is taking away money from conservation. It's well, it's really not. If people ask us what they can do for Colossal, we're like, you should donate to one of our conservation partners or go work on something that you're passionate about. We actually looked at this as a technology play, right? We went to you and Peter and many other investors and partners around the world and said, we really think this is a massive existential crisis if we lose biodiversity. We think that current conservation isn't working at the speed at which we are destroying the planet. And we want to build a technology company that can help human healthcare, and it can do quite well economically, but we want to subsidize all of that for conservation. And it's not the typical investor, you saw the first investor pitch. It was not typical investor pitch, 8 terrible slides with a picture of George. And when we started, we didn't even have a deal with George, which was another weird leap of faith by you and Peter and others. But fundamentally, if we could ask investors.
You and George look like founders.
George looks like a founder.
He's sort of. So I was like,
yeah,
you look like we could believe in these guys.
Yeah, he's a good dude, and he's actually funnier than he is smart. He's pretty smart. George,
you can quote Ben. You can send out a shout out to George. Ben says that George is pretty.
George is funnier than he is smart, and he's pretty damn smart. I think.
Yeah, exactly. Good luck with that next week. Good for you.
Yeah, but it's interesting. I only schedule calls now with George on Fridays after 4 p.m. because they go hours, and mostly on none of the topics we're supposed to talk about. So they're actually my favorite part of the week is my George wrap kind of sessions. But I did, the investment model that we thought of was if we can really help conservation while improving human healthcare and making technologies, we tried to create this win-win. And I'd say the first month or so from launch, conservation groups did not want to talk to us. They were like, we hate you, we don't want to talk to you, why are you doing this? And then as we sat down with them, I think now we have a whole conservation advisory board, but now we have, I think, over 35 of the top conservation groups. We just announced a partnership with Rewild, which is one of the leading conservation groups in the world that focuses on just saving and identifying lost species and building places for them, like the Sumatran rhino and others. And so I think that it's taken some time and education because they only grasp the de-extinction aspect. But once people start to understand the abilities to apply these technologies to extant species today that are on the brink of extinction, they get on board pretty exciting.
I'm going to make a comment about this, and then I'm going to go to sort of a grand visionary view that Ben and I talked about one of the first times we met. The thing that Ben and his team have done, the comment is they're open source in a way and share. So if you imagine all of these scientists and people who have this great passion and do this great work, they're underfunded. Up shows Ben and George, who get well-funded. And you've been a really great leader. This is just a comment, you have to respond. I'm going to give you the credit for this and your team to be willing to share the capital flows that come into this important work. In sort of getting the ancient DNA, how you've gone out to all the major universities. I was in Sweden with the guy who finds, all the DNA things. But this company's become a sharing and investing organization with those communities. And that's a really important theme in Singularity, right? The democratization of things and open, and this idea of abundance, and if you share and you create these communities, you get these outcomes. So I think you've adopted that strategy.
That theory, that focus and kind of philosophy of abundance, that there really is enough resources and there really is enough money and there is enough partners to work on. We fund, while we're working on the Mammoth, thylacine, dodo, we fund a lot of ancient DNA projects all over the world. Like, we're one of our top collaborators out of the University of Potsdam. He's incredible, and he's helped us with a lot of ancient elephant genomes and whatnot. And we now have over 65 mammoth genomes that we work with. Some from University of Stockholm, some from Alaska, from George's lab, some that Ariona got from the permafrost, which was amazing. And this incredible researcher, Mick, came to me and he's like, my life's passion is cave hyenas. I was like, okay, that's great. Everyone's gonna have their thing, right? And so I was like, okay, great. And he's like, will you fund all of my computational analysis and leverage your tools for cave hyenas? And I was like, and I was at this weird inflection point where I was like, if I fund this and it becomes public, while I'm trying to help him, there's gonna be, Ben wants cave hyenas more than anything, which are just bigger cave hyenas or bigger hyenas. And so we've had a couple of these weird inflection points where we've just said, it doesn't matter if we're in the community and they're helping us, we're going to help them. And occasionally we'll get some random thing. Like we funded a Smilodon
like an
project.
Old golfer maybe will show up to, who knows, I'll come back. And
there was 20 articles about cave hyenas. I was like, okay. So.
Let's go back to the global brand. So Ben and I meet, and I'm in his office, and he's showing this, and I said, this goes to NASA, but it maybe even goes a little beyond NASA in a way. I said, this can be such a foundational start or an additive to a foundational view of an abundant world and a hopeful world. And because we can save things or bring back things that we didn't, so we have this view. And so where that's taking us, right, is how important countries with abundant resources, and they're all located around the world, somewhere in the Middle East, Asia, here, Northern Europe, but how we think about bringing this to make these important legacies. So for example, we've had really constructive conversations, some in the Middle East, UAE and others, and some of those leaders, and this sometimes it's not even controversial, it's more just interesting around how people who are acquired abundance are looking, and it's encouraging because they're looking at ways they create opportunities for themselves, save their own species, save others. And I think that's a really important brand thread that we're working on and are really diligent about is being a global brand or a thoughtful global brand. Not necessarily we're just US, and we're excited about the United States, we're excited about the work that George has done, but they get money. But bringing this global community together and using this as an additional example of how we can work there. So we can talk a little more about that brand, because we did elevate all the way to this global sense of hope and transformation that's still driving us some, I think, has been fun.
Most of the work that we are doing, at least until 2024, is in other countries. It's not American, right? Like we're doing work in Botswana, we're doing work in Madagascar, we're doing work in Kenya, we're doing work in Australia. We've got several projects that we're now doing in the northern permafrost area. And it's most of our researchers for all of our de-extinction work really comes from incredible folks on the ground in those countries, right? And so if you look at our scientific advisory board, you look at the makeup of even the scientists, most of them are international, because it does take that, a diversity of thought, but it also just takes that complete diversity of kind of cultural aspects that we don't necessarily, we as a Texas company can't just, make up ourselves, right? Like, we have to go sit down and understand, like, we could say,
Sometimes I have to explain that you're from Texas. I'm just going to say,
yeah, but you like, we can't just go to Africa or from Texas be like, this is how you should save elephants in Africa. Like, we don't.
Really?
Yeah, we can say that, but then we're just assholes. And so we have to go there, and we have to actually understand what the true problem sets are. We have to go to Alaska and Canada and understand, how do people feel about mammoths? How do they feel about lost species? What species exist there that they're worried about?
Are most important, like, to the Aboriginal communities around the world. One of the things that comes from that thread is the kind of community that's coming together to support
awesome.
this, whether from investors, you work with like the Explorers Club, and on the brand. And so Ben's created this incredible technology team, and from George. The other element that's coming together really interesting is the sort of team and the storytelling that's becoming embedded in your work. And it's sort of the brand storytelling. So you might talk about the team and the sort of people. So Thomas Tull, who's our USI team, legendary entertainment, he did not go to best of my knowledge, didn't do molecular biology growing up, pretty sure.
He actually has a background in physics, which
physics is not bad. I mean,
if
you watch Big Bang Theory, there's always that thing between physics and molecular biology, right?
Competition,
physics came first, anyway. We know that. Sheldon fan, obviously. But it's interesting. Thomas's vision, as our investors' vision, and other things about getting this whole story out, and the investment you're making, and they're particularly helping us create, with whether it's documentaries and some of the best storytellers in the world who are working with you. And that's another hidden story. So government science is obvious, but talk about the storytellers who are working with you now.
Yeah, so we just announced a partnership with James Reed. If you don't know James Reed, he's amazing. He did My Octopus Teacher, You Shouldn't Eat Octopus. And if you watch that movie and eat octopus afterwards, I don't know, maybe you don't. So it's amazing. You should watch it. And critically acclaimed, which you won an Oscar for, critically acclaimed Chimp Empire. And so we had all these, incredible documentarian folks reach out to us wanting to follow Colossal. And we thought for a moment that was weird, and we didn't want to do that. But then at the same time, we preach transparency and collaboration. And I will tell you, after now, I guess, 8 months of filming, there's nothing more transparent than
your own reality TV show.
Than film crews there, when something happens, you're like, that wasn't like that. Those cells were supposed to not do that, and so capturing that and capturing the emotion of it is really important. But also, we think that if we are successful in our endeavors, we think kind of that halo effect of hopefully inspiring the next generation of little girls and boys that want to be biologists or geneticists could be captured here. We also want to be transparent to the public. We also want to be inclusive, right? Because we do have this international collaboration with so many great universities and partners around the world where, I don't think that someone can come to Colossal, come to the lab, and we obviously can't open the doors up to everybody and not see themselves there. And so we want the world to see that, because I think that we are in this unique situation where we're bringing so many incredible minds from all over the world together around this mission of hope that sometimes just gets Jurassic Park headlines, but there is so much more. And so being able to be transparent so that we are showing the ethics of everything that we're doing, the purpose behind it, the why behind it, while also educating the people on the power of the technologies for both human healthcare and conservation are just critically important to us. And so we're very excited about James Reed. He's very independent, and so it's great to have that level of independence, but at the same time, it is sometimes nerve-wracking, to always have a camera
all around you,
every single thing, and you're like, I wish I wouldn't have said that.
Well, if you're going to say those sort of things, and we can watch The Drive to Survive of
Yeah.
The woolly
Oh, well,
mammoth.
Sophie from Drive to Survive is actually she's
Yeah.
actually the showrunner. So we actually have her too.
I know, I kind of remembered that. I was just going to help you. Your
Like,
memory?
Yeah, well, I thought that you were just like, that was.
No, I just giving you a hint.
Actually pretty smart.
I try. Not as smart as George, not as funny as George, but that's okay. We'll go,
close
we
second.
don't have to go there. I think the other thing that's sort of interesting, that we have a few minutes left, how we're really thinking about the ethics and the morality, because the way and the speed at which we're pushing the technology, for good outcomes, there's some interesting, questions that come up, right? People ask, it doesn't take much artificial wombs because you have to scale, these growth. Talk about sort of the ethics, interaction with ethical community, religious communities.
Yeah.
How's that? That's a great part of your story. How's that going?
Yeah, it's
How's that going for you anyway?
it's much better now
Than it was?
than when we started. I went on Glenn Beck and didn't get yelled at, which was kind of, I think the step towards the right direction of listening, right? But I think that we take a stance that regardless of, because there's lots of religions on the planet, regardless of what or nothing or who you believe while we're here, I think generally people can get behind the belief that, whoever or whatever or nothing that gave us this, we should take care of it, right? Because it's like all these people that want to go to Mars and the moon, I was like, that shit's designed to kill you. It's actually pretty nice here. We can breathe and drink the water in most places. And so it's one of those things that, I think for us, we just take the stance that we have a, stewardship, hopefully through technology, to take care of what we've been given, regardless of whoever has been given to us. And so we've tried to have that attitude. And, I think it has resonated with different religious groups and non-religious groups. I think generally speaking, while people debate climate change still on some level at some point, people debate capitalism and other different types of government, I think fundamentally people agree that biodiversity is a good thing and that we shouldn't lose it, and we are losing it, and we should find
It'd be better to have more.
Yeah. I think that's generally accepted now across we have gotten the playing God concept. And, we argue that, if you kill the dodo or the thylacine, or you wipe out half the Amazon, or you take medicine, you're playing God on some level, right? And so why don't we try to use some of this stuff for good?
I think it's great. Two more important questions, I think, today. I'm sure everyone want to hear both of them. I'm going to start with the first one, which is why you're doing this. Why, your story. We focused on the company, but you're a visionary leader. You have, great passion. So share why this is important to Ben Lamm.
I built 5 software and technology companies, and I was like, I could just keep doing this, I guess. And it's after a point, it's not as fulfilling. I got really sick, which I think is always an interesting thing. I got really sick, and I did some interesting introspection, and met this crazy guy, George. And I felt like I had been in 1,000 pitch meetings where I was like, oh, this company's going to change the world. And I'd given the classic technology entrepreneur pitch, like, we're doing this to change the world, yada, yada, yada. But none of those companies changed the world. They all just got acquired, and people made money, and it provided good jobs, and maybe they were incremental updates to the world, right? But 1.1s. None of them were step function changes. And then when George put this on my plate, because this is really George's idea, I felt like I'm going to be the biggest hypocrite of all time. I was like, this guy has given me an opportunity to do what I've said I've wanted to do, and what I've, in 1,000 investor meetings. And if I don't do it, I'm a hypocrite. And so I felt like there's a huge opportunity to do something that has more impact. I will say it's harder than anything I've done. I've gotten a lot of, I've had lots of people say, man, you could just keep building profitable software companies and people would be nicer to you. And so I've gotten a lot of feedback around this, some a lot good, but some also scary. And so, I just felt like, George gave me this opportunity. I had the right skills to do it. I think it's important. And,
Well,
this is just what we're doing. But there should be 1,000 other people doing 1,000 other companies to do biodiversity. This is just kind of our little goal.
Well, it's an inspiration, I know, to people, and the fact that, I think we're meaningfully can impact the movement of capital markets as well and show the scale, because it's important that someone says, wow, that all of this technology can come to bear now with good leaders and create, amazing outcomes.
But we need abundance, and we need more things like Singularity, right? Like, we need people in organizations like you and Peter Diamandis and others in organizations like this that promote that type of thinking, because like we all don't want to just go sit in our house in another pandemic and like watch fucking Netflix, right? Like, we want to do something, regardless of what your spiritual beliefs is. Like, we're here now. I think we can all agree we're here now, regardless of whether you think it's a simulation or what. We're here, so we should.
We're not going there,
yeah,
Ben.
we should do something.
The Matrix.
Right?
We missed you, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, but we should do something, and this is what we're doing. And I would say that there needs to be more capital, more people like Singularity, which we appreciate, and more people that are kind of harnessing these types of moonshots, because this is like what's going to change the world. Like, making a 1.1 of Slack is not going to fucking do anything.
Well, so this is, thank you.
Not that Slack's not great. I think
no, we love Slack, but
use Slack every day. I don't want the Slack to be mad at me.
Well, so first of all, I think first thank you and the team, and certainly Singularity. We've really enjoyed this journey. I hope when we leave this picture of this idea of the hope and the capability of bringing all these technologies together, that we talked about this tree, that then branches will come from that you can have that picture, you can see the impact we'll have directly and indirectly. So that was one of the visual pictures mental to leave with you. And also this sense of hope and the brand, and how that can inspire young people, but also can bring governments and diverse people around the world to use these technologies to create a great outcome. So Ben, we're thankful for your leadership. We're particularly thankful to be here with the summit, which is some of our good friends, and certainly thankful for all of you. So Ben, thank you very much.
Yeah.